But first up, the big story, and this is about the Middle East crisis. Viewers, finally, after 108 days, an end to the Iran war is in sight. Both US and Iran have agreed on a deal framework to finally end the war. The deal is expected to be signed on Friday in Switzerland, but like they say, it is not done until it is done. There are 5 days to go. And then there is Israel. Now, officially, not many details have been released, but US President Donald Trump has announced end of American blockade of Iranian ports. He has claimed that Strait of Hormuz will reopen on Friday after the peace agreement is signed in Switzerland. Now, as per Iran, tentative deal ends fighting on all fronts, including Lebanon. World leaders hailed the agreement. Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed the understanding, calling it a step that could restore regional peace and stability. Now, viewers, there is a lot of optimism in the world about what has really happened between US and Iran. But simultaneously, there is a lot of uncertainty as well, because it is 5 long days between the agreement on deal framework and the proposed time for signing the deal. Let's talk about the contentious issues. Now, Lebanon remains an immediate threat because Israel is not party to the deal that both sides have agreed to. Now, Israel has strongly rejected the reported agreement, saying the deal does not bind the country and will not be implemented as outlined. Israeli officials stated that Israel is not a banana republic and that external pressure will not change its position. Israelis have also made it clear that Israeli forces will continue to remain deployed in designated security zones in Lebanon, Syria, as well as Gaza. Now, the sticking points also include Strait of Hormuz. Iran demands Iranian arrangements. Now, transit fees, toll protocols. US has said that there should be unconditional Hormuz freedom. There should be freedom of navigation. There should be toll-free movement of ships from the Strait of Hormuz. Now, another sticking point is the US blockade, US troop withdrawal, whether that will actually happen or not. Now, withdrawal around Iran and Middle East is something that the world really needs right now. 19 major US military bases are there in the Middle East, over 24 smaller outposts and airfields. Now, US closing bases means abandoning allies like Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, as well as Qatar. Then you've got another sticking point, which is enriched uranium stockpile of Iran. Now, according to Iran, there's no clear clause on transfer or destruction as far as the enriched uranium stockpile is concerned, which is over 10,000 kg. Critical portion of inventory is roughly 440 kg, and the uranium enriched purity is over 60%. Now, US is saying that there should be irreversible dismantlement of a nuke capability. Now, another sticking point is Lebanon. And here, Iran says, there's a need to protect Hezbollah and Lebanon from Israel. US says it can't really control what Israel does. It can't control Israel's military objective. So what will be Israel's stand on deal? That's why this is a big cause of concern. Another sticking point is cash and sanctions relief. Iran says there should be immediate release of $12 billion of Iranian frozen assets held in Qatar. US says no funds until nuke dismantlement is verified. Removal of nuclear materials is important, and verification will happen before the funds are actually released. Now, viewers, this is something that has happened between US and Iran, and that's why we are saying next 5 days are extremely critical, because on Friday, the deal is expected to be signed. Right now, there is just an agreement from both sides on some kind of a peace deal framework, and Israel is not a party to this. Now, the world clearly cheered this particular development. Stock markets cheered it. Investors were quite happy across the world because oil prices fell sharply. Oil prices have fallen to their lowest levels, viewers, since March, after US President Donald Trump and Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister announced that they have reached a preliminary agreement to end the Middle East conflict and restore shipping through Strait of Hormuz. US and Iran are set to sign Memorandum of Understanding in Switzerland on Friday. Energy markets heaved a sigh of relief. Brent crude prices fell sharply. So let's tell you how prices have really moved. February 27, just one day before the war started, Brent crude prices were around $72.97 per barrel. 9th of March, when there were fears of prolonged disruption, Brent prices went up to $99 per barrel. Then 18th of March, Israel attacked South Pars gas field. Brent prices went up even further to $107.66 per barrel. Then 31st of March, $118.35 per barrel was the level for Brent crude price because Trump told the allies to get their own oil. 17th of April, an assurance came from Iran for safe passage of vessels from Strait of Hormuz. There was a drop in Brent crude prices. It fell to about $90.36 per barrel. Then April 29, Trump announced Hormuz blockade. That's when Brent prices moved up again to $118.03 per barrel. Then on 29th of May, there were hopes of a US-Iran deal, and that led to oil prices coming down to $90.72 per barrel. 15th of June, which is today, now there is agreement from both sides on the US-Iran peace deal framework, and Brent crude prices have fallen sharply to $83.1 odd per barrel. So this is how Brent prices have moved since the war started, and we've tried to explain to you how prices moved up and down on the basis of developments that took place over the last 3 months. Now, viewers, the fall in oil prices bolstered investor confidence as well, from the Lal Street in India to other Asian markets, especially those dependent on Middle East for energy supplies. When Sensex opened this morning, it was up about 1,000 points. It closed with a gain of about 700 points. Nifty in the morning gained 1.35%. That was the impact of this news, and it ended also with a gain of around 1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 was up over 5%. South Korea's Kospi was up 5.68%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng was also up 0.45%. Let's now take you through the reasons behind the rally in stock markets this Monday. Now, why is it that there is an agreement between US and Iran for a peace deal and there is cheer here in India? Let's explain to you. Now, stability in West Asia will mean greater energy security for oil importing countries like Asia, like India and other economies in Asia. Lower energy cost will mean boost for energy importing countries. Lower oil prices will help ease inflationary pressures in countries. For example, today we got the wholesale inflation data for the month of May, and it is now over 9%. It is quite high. So for a country like India, it's a good news. It will ease inflationary pressure, because if the Strait of Hormuz remains shut, there will be supply disruption that will continue of crude oil prices, and that's the cause of concern. Then lower oil prices also mean reduced pressure on central banks, and lower energy cost means support for economic growth, and extremely important for a country like India. Now, viewers, even though there is hope that deal will be signed on Friday, but 5 days are long enough to change things, given that there are some hurdles. US President Donald Trump has said that Strait of Hormuz will be reopened and that oil will flow on both ends again for the region. Iranian state media says that one of the points including in the Memorandum of Understanding is lifting of the US naval blockade of Iranian ports within 30 days. Let's take you through now the status of Strait of Hormuz. Before the war started, on an average, around 100 vessels used to cross Strait of Hormuz per day. Between February 28th till 8th of April, in total, 283 vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Average was around 7 per day. So from 100 per day, after the war started, it came down to 7 per day. Then there was a ceasefire, and since then, from 13th of April to 1st of June, in total, 291 ships have crossed the Strait of Hormuz. The average is roughly 6 per day. While the world is watching the developments around the Strait of Hormuz, there are hundreds of sailors who remain caught in a prolonged maritime crisis. According to official figures, 13 Indian flagged vessels are currently stranded in the region, with a total of 562 Indian crew members affected. We'll get you that graphics as well. Now, out of these, 329 sailors are aboard ships located west of the Strait of Hormuz, while other 233 are stranded in the Gulf of Oman. For many of these seafarers, the uncertainty has stretched on for 107 days, raising concerns over crew welfare, vessel operations, and the impact on global shipping. And joining us right now is Dr. Carole, who is CEO, Crystol Energy. Thank you very much, Dr. Carole, for joining us here on Times Now this evening. We would like to understand from you if indeed, the US blockade is lifted from the Strait of Hormuz and there is a peace deal that gets signed on Friday. What does it mean for the energy market specifically? There are vessels that are still stranded. Oil prices fell down sharply today. But how much time, in your opinion, will it take for things to get back to how they used to be before the war started?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of reasons to, major reason to celebrate today, because the whole situation has kept us nervous as market observers, but also as human beings. And for me personally, coming from the region. So the fact that the two main parties, the US and Iran, have succeeded in reaching such a milestone, even though they have not signed the deal, and it's not really a final deal because there are lots of things that remain uncertain, that is already something positive. And you can see how the market has welcomed this news, and we see how the pressure on oil prices has eased tremendously from nearly 100 to now in the low 80s. That's a big drop, because that was, a lot of it was actually geopolitical risk premium. And in that respect, the more we feel confident that this kind of peace deal is going to be a lasting deal, the lower the pressure we're going to see on prices. I'm going to see actually prices going back perhaps to the pre-war level. The big question is when. And for me to be able to answer your question in terms of how quickly that is going to be, I have to really look deep into my crystal ball, because nobody knows how robust and how fragile this deal is at the moment, because we have this kind of news announced, but we don't know the nitty-gritty details of the deals. We know there are some agreement, but not really something that is going to last for years from now on. So that's why it might take a little bit longer for us to go back to the pre-war level, because of this lingering uncertainty, and that problems can still flare up. And we don't know also what would happen in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. That also can affect any peace deal between the US and Iran.
Okay, now hypothetically, let's take an example. If, for example, the deal is signed on Friday and Strait of Hormuz is declared open. Now there is, there is no hurdle for ships that want to cross the Strait of Hormuz. How much time do you think it's going to take in terms of supply disruptions to end, and for the energy markets to come back to the levels that, the world would really desire? How much time do you think that's going to take? And I'm asking you specifically because even the infrastructure, the critical energy infrastructure was hit during this war. Even that will require some time to get back to the pre-war level, isn't it?
You're absolutely right to raise that issue, but we tend to overlook the ability of Middle Eastern countries to restore their production quite quickly. They have proved that to happen in the past, when we saw, for example, in previous instability, or even when upscale facility in Saudi Arabia was attacked in 2019, people said, oh, it's going to take a long time for it to be restored, but then the Saudis were able to restore it pretty quickly. And also today we forget that not only for economic reasons, the Middle Eastern countries are very keen on restoring their exports ASAP and their production as well. But there are two important matters here. First of all, there is the reputation of the region as a reliable supplier is very, very important for these countries, and they will do their best to restore that as soon as possible. And second, there is national pride. National pride whereby if they just go out and then say, oh my goodness, we are unable to restore that facility, that for them is like a defeat in this way after they were attacked by the Iranians. But if they emerge more stronger than before and show that, hold on a minute, yes, we were bruised, yes, we were affected, but we are back on our feet quite strongly, then that is another element that people tend to underestimate. So it's not just about the technical aspect, there is the political will, there is a national support for all that. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see us, if under this assumption that you use in terms of everything is going to be fine, peace deal lasting, no disruptions, etc., then I would say it's going to be very quick, a question of days, if not few weeks, before we go back to normal rather than months or a year, as some pessimists would tell you.
Is there any target for Brent crude that you're looking at right now, given the situation that we are in at this moment? Is the worst behind us if the peace agreement gets signed on Friday?
We can say the worst is behind us only when we know that there is a lot of clarity and support by the international community with regard to Iran's nuclear program. That remains a sticky point, and we can see how at the moment the deal is subject to the two parties continuing negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. And I don't think we can really say that that's it, the worst is behind us, as long as we have that wild card still on the table. But at the moment, it seems that the hostilities that we saw over the last 2 months may have been behind us, but really for me to say that the worst is behind us, to speak with greater confidence, is when I know that there is a final deal, not only between the US and Iran, but also the international community with respect to Iran's nuclear program. Then we can say, yes, we are moving on to a new Middle East era.
Okay. Any thoughts on what it could really mean for a country like India, even though India has tried to diversify its energy, resources, but for us here in India, the fuel prices have gone up because we import at least 85% of our energy requirement?
It's definitely positive news for a country like India and other energy importing countries, because it simply means you're going to spend less on the import bills. And it also means, so prices are going to go down, but also you don't have any more, or at least it's less than before, this fear of not having sufficient supplies to keep the lights on or keep your factories running or keeping the roads, the cars on the roads. So it's definitely good news. But I really also hope that there are some lessons here, a reminder that energy security is guaranteed by diversity and diversity alone. So I also always see that a crisis teaches us very important lessons, and it would be a mistake to simply go back to the same pattern before the crisis. We should always remember that geopolitical tensions can flare up any moment, any time. And the only way that a country like India can protect itself from potential increases in volatility in prices is by finding a very balanced portfolio of suppliers of energy, and also by diversifying its sources of energy from oil, coal, gas to nuclear and green energy such as solar and wind, to name but a few. So that's the only way you can really protect yourself from future developments as the one we saw in the last few months.
All right, we leave it there. Dr. Carole, appreciate you joining us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective.
Thank you.
Let's now move on. We have some breaking inputs, viewers, coming in at this point in time. And amid continuing concerns over shipping security in the Strait of Hormuz, the government has said movement of vessels through the critical waterway, Strait of Hormuz, has resumed. 10 India flagged ships and 5 foreign flagged ships vessels have successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz. So clearly a big relief there coming in on the ground as well after days of uncertainty. And responding to concerns raised by Indian seafarers, the government has also said that all Indian crew members on board the tanker Bokem Marengo are safe and that no injury or untoward incident has been reported on the vessel. Let's go across to my colleague Mayank, who is joining us on the broadcast for more on this. Mayank, give us more details. What have you learned about India flagship specifically?
See, 4 days back, almost 5 days back, there was a briefing done, and in that number of ships which was said to have, which was stuck in that area were 13. Now, what we have got to know is actually 10 of them, which are Indian flagged actually. They have been allowed to cross those Strait, and they'll be crossing Gulf of Oman, and then they'll come under the umbrella of security umbrella of Indian Navy, and thus will be heading to their harbor. So that's the kind of news we are listening, and they are of multiple cargo make actually. That includes gas, those which are carrying gas and gas tankers, which are some of them are also carrying crude oils also. So it becomes a major movement, and as far as things were concerned, it is going to give as a major relief, come as a major relief for India's, fuel and energy requirements is concerned. And more than that, what is actually, it is also a major symbol in the sense that things in the coming days will be seen in a much improved and positive state. That is even more important because the sentiments will change, and the way the things are being looked, at least a bright side will be there, positivity will come into the atmosphere and environment.
Right, Mayank, yeah. Thank you very much for the moment for joining us with your inputs on this story. Now, viewers, next big focus of the world is going to be the G7 summit in France. And on the sidelines, there's going to be a crucial meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump. Take a look at this special report on what to expect from this meeting.
We're here in the northern French Alps, the foothills of the French Alps at Evian, where the world leaders of the G7 countries, the world's most powerful countries, will be aligning for the next 3 or 4 days. There's been a big announcement that Trump has put out on Truth Social that the war in Iran is now finally entering a degree of completion. There's a peace agreement that is likely to be signed between Iran and America. Iran has simply given an assurance that it will stick to its NPT commitments and that it will not pursue a nuclear weapon. But the question really is, how far can Netanyahu go in angering Donald Trump? Will he cross Donald Trump's wrath? A peace agreement will be signed in Switzerland in Geneva on Friday later this week, and there will be a collective sigh of relief when Donald Trump walks in for the dinner for the G7 leaders summit later tonight in Evian.
Let's now move on and shift our focus to another big story of the day. A graduation ceremony at Stanford University turned into a global flashpoint. Google CEO Sundar Pichai, addressing the class of 2026, was met with a student walkout marked by Palestinian flags, slogans and protests. Around 200 students reportedly left the venue in protest as he took the stage. The demonstration was organized by groups including Students for Justice in Palestine and No Tech for Apartheid, with objections centered on Google's involvement in Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion cloud computing contract with Israeli government alongside Amazon. Videos from the ceremony showed students standing, chanting, waving flags and exiting the stadium in protest. Activists argue that tech companies should not support systems that could be used in military or security operations. Google, however, maintains its services are for government functions and denies enabling them. Notably, Pichai did not address artificial intelligence in his speech, focusing instead on broader themes of opportunity, change and the future. The incident triggered a fierce online debate. Some Indian origin tech leaders and investors criticized the protest, calling it biased and misguided, while others defended it as a valid exercise of free speech and student activism. The controversy now sits at the intersection of technology, politics, corporate responsibility, and the deepening polarization over Gaza and Israel. And with this, we will slip into a very, very short break on Breaking Ground. Lots lined up for you on the other side as well. Stay with us.